Welcome back, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, and this is your next story. The pickup rattles every time I let off the clutch. I keep it in second gear and hold the wheel firm while the road spits chunks of loose pavement at the undercarriage. Thomas follows in the motorhome, one truck length behind. We're not trying to go fast. We just need to stay moving. The baby's asleep in a cardboard box tied to the passenger footwell. Claire sits with one hand braced on the edge of it and the other holding a cracked plastic bottle inside her coat. She doesn't speak. No one really does anymore while we drive. The road has turned to holes and sharp turns through broken places. Nothing is flat. Nothing is clean. And the last thing we want is attention. It's been 22 days since we left the ridge. I never turned around. Not even once. I told myself I would look back from the far side of the trees. I didn't. The infected hit the slope like they knew where to go. The wall lasted 2 hours. The tower fell before sunset. The generator got shut down. The last working spotlight died. We packed what we could. The bus gate snapped. The barn roof was already giving way. I saw it all from the pickup's mirror. I didn't feel much, which scared me more than anything. I just wanted everyone to make it through the first night out. That was the only thing I cared about. We left with whatever still ran. My old diesel pickup. The motorhome Thomas and Claire arrived in, still patched with tape, hope, and a lot of luck. 2 bikes strapped to a rear rack. A 12-gallon drum of water wedged under the motorhome table. Tools in milk crates. A sack of oats. A box of baby clothes that never got worn. Seeds inside coffee cans. 2 rifles. 3 pistols. A bow that Sophia doesn't miss with. Caleb's axe. Evelyn's ledger. Before we rolled, we dealt with the animals. We led Sky, Storm and Cole out past the lower fence and turned them loose toward the trees. We opened the goat pen and scattered salt and grain so they would move off instead of circling back. We unlatched the chicken coop doors and pulled the wire wide so they could run. It was quick, rough, and the only way that gave them a chance. Nadia climbed in last, rope bag across her back, staring at the tree line like she still thought someone might come out of it. Sakura shut the barn door. She paused, bowed to it once, then turned and said nothing. I didn't ask. It didn't need to be explained. She'd closed that door forever. We pulled out before the herd hit the house. We didn't know where we were going then. We just needed to get away before the lights came back on. If they ever came back on. The first night on the road, we camped in the shadow of a smashed billboard and kept the vehicle's nose out. Watches every 90 minutes. No fires. Cold food. The second night we took a gravel pit because wind stayed high there and noise blew past, and because the ground was flat enough that the motorhome door did not slam itself shut. The third night near a feed store, 2 infected walked into the fence line and rattled the wire until Caleb put both down with clean hits from the shoulder. The shots echoed longer than they should have. We moved before dawn without coffee and decided on a new rule. No gunfire unless the road is over, and if somebody pulls a trigger, the motorhome starts moving while the echo is still in the air. Sakura kept everyone fed from a camp stove that reminded me of the old greenhouse heater. Rice one night, oats the next. Fish from a creek when Mark and Sophia got lucky with a net. Thomas checked fuel like a worshipper checks candles. He keeps a bottle of stabilizer in his jacket and a rubber hose wrapped in a towel under his seat. He does not talk about miracles. He makes them out of plastic and patience. Claire runs the baby's schedule like a clinic. Boil water, cool water, wash hands. Wipe surfaces until they squeak. No one argues when she tells us to take off jackets before crossing the motorhome threshold. I keep the radio on Darryl's frequency at the window mount. Some nights there is nothing but a hiss. Some nights a voice names mile markers and roads to avoid. And a woman reminds everyone to crack fuel caps before siphoning to bleed pressure and not eat anything from a sealed tin that bulges. That kind of advice would be laughable in a different life. Now it keeps hands from shaking. 2 weeks into the road, near a river town that still smells like floodwater and dead weeds, we stop for a supply run that looks quick on paper. Seeds, blades, filters, a coil of paracord. In and out with soft feet. The plan takes the pickup around the back of a feed store. Me, Mark and Nadia go in. Caleb stays with the motorhome and the baby with a sword length of pipe resting across his knees. Evelyn sets the watch with Sophia and Thomas at the corners of the lot. Claire keeps the baby breathing quiet, which is a larger job than anybody admits out loud. The alley is tight and wet. A metal door hangs crooked in its frame like someone tried to jam it shut with a forklift and failed. We slide through sideways and into a room full of grain dust and broken pallets that smell like mice. Nadia taps my shoulder and points up at a run of chain racked to the wall. She wants it for later. I nod and keep eyes on the dark cut into the main store. Mark moves light on his feet, lighter than he used to. He has grown into his body and into a kind of focus that is not bravado. He carries the small flashlight in his mouth when he needs both hands. He learned that from Sophia. She learned it from the road. The seed rack is half empty, not stripped. We sort packets by season with the speed of people who have done this too many times. Beans, beets, cabbage, anything we can put in the ground if we find ground. I find 3 boxes of utility blades behind a fallen display and pass one back. Nadia tucks it into her rope bag without looking. She keeps her hair tied tight under a hat and a loop of tape around her wrist where she tears off pieces to label whatever she touches. In the next aisle, a shallow shelf groans and then rides against its bolts. The sound is small and wrong. I hold up a fist. Mark freezes. Nadia turns her head and looks up, not at the shelf, but at the cracked windows above it. She whispers one word, load. I do not ask what she means because the answer arrives in a breath. The ceiling sags. Something heavy slid on the roof when the rain came and rested right there for weeks, maybe months. Our steps are enough to shake it loose. I point to the exit and we move left, slow and exact. The ceiling keeps its secret for 3 steps and then the corner gives. Plaster dust lifts and hangs in the flashlight beam like fog. I put a hand on Mark's back and a hand on Nadia's shoulder and push. The ceiling falls with the sound of a truck full of bottles breaking in a tight space. Shelves go backward. A beam drops across the aisle like a gate. We dive under the fallen section and come up coughing in the corridor that leads to the loading dock. The noise pulls a voice from the front of the store. Not human. That wet sound with breath at the edge of it. The first infected hits the corner and folds at the knees and stands again like the muscles remember, but the bones do not. I put it down with a low shot, and then a second, because the skull came at an angle through dust. The sound bounces once off the tiles and out the door into the alley. I hate the echo. I also hate dying, and this is the math we are stuck with. We clear to the dock and hit air that does not smell like dust. I put my shoulder into the push bar and the door gives an inch and then stops hard. Trash wedged against it outside. Mark slides his fingers under the jam and pulls a milk crate away with a grunt. The door opens another inch. Nadia throws her shoulder in and the bar dents with a pop. The door swings. We spill into a narrow strip of concrete between 2 dumpsters. The alley ahead narrows again under a fallen sign we will have to climb. The storefront we just left makes a long complaint and then sighs as something settles deeper. Mark turns back to grab the bag of seed packets, and in that same second a second ceiling section drops on the far side of the store with a hard slap. He does not scream. He sets the bag down and turns to help me run the pole through a loop to lift the sign. I shove the edge up and lock it on a broken bracket. That buys us 20 inches. Enough to crawl. I go first because I am older and heavier, and I want the shape of the load to be under my stomach if it falls. On the far side of the sign, the alley stays tight and then opens at the loading bay. We are out and running before the dust decides it wants to stick. I call in on the handheld. Coming out. Small delay. 2 hits. No tail. Caleb answers with a short click and then his voice. Copy. Move normal. Motorhome ready. At the lot, I hand the seed bag to Evelyn and say, add to ledger. She writes without looking up. Sophia takes Mark's flashlight and checks his face with eyes that see more than a flashlight sees. He nods once and squeezes her hand and lets go. Nadia waves off help like always and drops her rope bag in the truck bed and says she wants a drink. I toss her a canteen. She tips a mouthful and then makes a sound I do not like. Not pain. Not thirst. Something else. She drops the canteen and looks at her left forearm. There is a torn line along the outside, where she must have caught herself on a broken bracket when the door stuck. It is not long, but it is deep enough that fat glows pale in the cut. Bleach, I say. Claire grabs the kit. Evelyn tears the seal and hands me the bottle without asking whether I want assistance. We flush it and hold pressure until the bleed slows. I can see her pulse in the skin below the cut. Nadia stares at my face and not at her arm. I ask her whether anything else hit her. She says no. I ask again, and she shakes her head. I nod and say nothing about how that cut looks like a bracket and not a bite. We are moving before we feel ready. The pickup leads. The motorhome follows. The road out of town is clear for half a mile and then turns into a mess of stalled cars and a fallen light pole. We pick our way through at walking speed. 2 infected follow us for 40 yards and then lose interest when a blown flag catches on a fence and snaps like a dying bird. I hate how the world gives us small gifts with ugly labels. We camp that night on a hill above a marsh and count heads and supplies and bandages. The cut is clean. We clean it again. Nadia says she feels cold and we wrap her in a blanket. She does not ask to rest inside the motorhome. She lies under the awning next to the fold-out table and listens to the radio with me. Her hands twitch in sleep like a climber dreaming of a ledge. I watch the skin around the cut for the flush that means trouble. It does not come. I fall asleep for an hour against a tire and wake to a quiet that is not peace. Morning is wrong from the first minute. Mark is not at the kettle. Nadia is not under the blanket. The rope bag is still where she left it by the truck. The air smells like metal and cold, burned coffee. I call Mark's name once, not loud. No answer. Sophia walks the back of the hill and bends over tracks near a collapsed drift fence. She points to disturbed soil near a drainage pipe and says one word, down. I climb the slope and look into the pipe. It runs under the hill to a culvert that empties into the marsh. The earth around the pipe shows 2 slide marks, one fresh, one older. My stomach turns once and then steadies. I do not say what I feel. I just breathe. We find Mark 40 minutes later, walking back along the fence line with his face set and both hands empty. There is dust on his coat and a smear on his cheek that he missed when he wiped it with his sleeve. He does not look at me. He looks at the space where the motorhome door is half open and the baby is making a soft noise. He stops beside Sophia, touches her shoulder once, and moves past her without talking. He picks up the ledger and writes 3 lines. He closes it and sets it on the table. He goes to the water can and tilts it until the pour splashes his hands and the dirt runs down into the grass. He sits on the ground with his back to the wheel well and looks at the nothing between the trucks. No one asks anything. There are answers that do not make sound useful. We roll before noon, because staying still after a silence like this is begging for more trouble. I take the road toward the coast because the river nets are empty, and because the air is starting to carry a bite that says, we need a place that is not a ditch. Herds move along valley lines at this time of year. We saw what a herd does to a wall. I will not stand under that again if I have a choice. The land changes in the last hour of the 3rd week. Pines give way to scrub, and then sand. The wind carries salt. We crest a low rise where beach grass holds a dune together and stop when we see the water, grey, flat, ugly, and useful. The beach runs north and south in a long line with no people on it. Half a mile out, maybe less, something big sits on a sandbar. At first it looks like a long piece of the horizon. Then the shape resolves. A container ship listing to port, deck stacked with boxes twisted and skewed. The white superstructure near the stern sits high enough to show windows like rows of dark teeth. I put the glass up and lay my breath off the lens with the back of my wrist. The ship is not small. It is not close. The tide line shows wet sand, and then a darker band where water reaches for the dune. Between us and the sandbar, the sea looks shallow, but that is a trick you learn once and never unlearn. We count containers, count cranes, count ladders. We look for boats. We do not see skiffs. We do not see flags. We do see a broken rail on the starboard side and a run of chain hanging from a deck fitting that swings in the wind and glints when the sun breaks the cloud. Thomas says, we can ferry with a rope line and a door if we have to. Claire says, we can build a stretcher sling for the baby and take turns. Evelyn says, we do not touch the ship until we sound it, and chain off anything that can slide and kill a person who does not deserve that end. Caleb says the ship has choke points we can own. He looks at the port side and the bow and nods like he knows its language. Nadia would have started tying knot samples in the sand by now and correcting my stance on a ladder. I do not let that thought go anywhere. I fold it up and put it behind the spot in my head where the tower used to stand. We camp back from the dune where the wind is a little less aggressive and set a rotation that gives one person the ocean and one the land at every hour. The infected do not swim well. They do walk far. Nights by water carry sound weird. I write the plan for tomorrow on the back of a cardboard box. First, sound the channel. A line with a weight and a door on sawhorses to float as a raft. Second, mark a path with cut stakes and bright rags. Third, approach the hull only at slack when the current does not twist ankles and force hands. Fourth, nobody climbs until we cut a ladder that is our ladder, not whatever is left hanging crooked. Fifth, if we see any sign of a claim, paint, flags, fresh lines, we back off, wait, and watch for a full day. Sakura makes soup that tastes like salt and onion, and calms my head enough to not grind my teeth. She sits with me after the others bed down, and puts a small bowl of rice in my hands and says nothing, which is her way of making me speak. I tell her about the feel of stone under my boots when the tower fell. I say it without drama. She nods. She looks at the ship and says one word in English, home. Then she shrugs and adds, maybe. I laugh once and then stop because the sound feels too loud. Mark sits apart with Sophia and peels tape off the barrel of his small flashlight and rewraps it. He does that when his hands need a job. He has not said the word Nadia since morning. We are not poking it. When he wants to set it down in my hands, he will. If he wants to set it down in Sophia's and have her decide where it goes next, I will accept that. There are rules for movement and rules for grief. I follow both when I can. Morning gives us a low tide and a sky that cannot commit to rain. The ship leans the same as yesterday. No fresh movement. No new noise. We drop the door from an empty building onto the sawhorses and push the raft toward the channel. Caleb and I wade until the water hits mid-thigh and the bottom goes soft. We stop there. The rope pays out slow, and we mark depth with a knot every foot. 6 knots near shore, 8 at the first channel, 12 at the cut where the bar drops. It shallows just before the bar like a step. That gives us a line we can walk if we go slow and keep a hand on the rope. We plant stakes and tie rags that flap like wet birds and make the place feel human. We choose the approach point at the starboard quarter where a ladder once ran and now hangs bent. We will not use that. Nadia would have said it first, but she is not here. I say it to keep her voice in the room. Nadia liked redundancy. Nadia did not trust welded steel older than yesterday. I can hear her talking about corrosion without hearing her voice. I drive a pipe into the sand and tie the rope to it and walk back to shore and tie the other end to the old frame of a signpost that lists 20 degrees toward defeat and still holds. Evelyn and Claire build a sling for the baby using a towel and webbing. Thomas tests it against a fence post until the knot creaks and then creaks less. He has a way of tightening things without breaking them. He tests again until he likes the sound. He says nothing about losing a child in another life. He lets the work be the thing that speaks. Before we commit to the hull, I walk back up the dune, where the wind cuts my words in half, and call the frequency Darryl gave. I say, coast, large hull, possible salvage. No flags visible. Any traffic in last 7 days? The net comes alive 5 minutes later with a voice that tells me about a barge convoy 3 towns south, and a shot heard 2 nights ago near a ferry yard. Nothing about a container ship on a sandbar. That is absence, not a green light. It is what we have. We go at slack, each with a rope ring over the shoulder and gloves. Caleb goes first with an ice screw and a hammer to set our own steps if the hull skin gives us a place. The ship's side stares down at us like a building that forgot windows. We reach the starboard quarter and find a seam where 2 plates meet and the paint peels. Caleb sets the screw, tests the hold, and pulls once strong and twice harder. It does not budge. He smiles without his mouth and looks at me with eyebrows up. Good anchor. He sets 3 more and runs a loop of line between them like a handrail. We climb off the door raft onto the lowest rung of what used to be a maintenance ladder and is now more wish than metal. Our rope does the real work. We go up one at a time and clip to the line at every step. The deck smells like salt trapped in steel and the faint sweet of old fuel. The containers stack high, some lifted off their pins, some shoved forward and held by luck and friction. We chain off the first row so if anything slips it will hit chain first and stick for a breath. We move bow to stern in a squat, keeping low and away from edges where a boot can slide. The bridge door is steel and locked. We mark it and keep moving. We do not bang. We do not pry. Not yet. First win is a run of open-top containers with tarps blown away, scrap inside, pallets, old banding, some lengths of channel metal we can use to make a gate on shore. Second is a blue box labeled with a chemical name I cannot pronounce and will not try to invent knowledge about. We paint a skull on it with grease and walk around. The third is a refrigerated unit with a dead compressor and a door sealed with tape. Evelyn says we cut it only when we have a quarantine plan and a tarp and a way to back out if the smell tells us to back out. I agree. We chalk a circle on the deck and mark a number. At the bow we find the chain locker hatch open a hand's width. The wind makes it clack. We wedge it and peer inside. Dark iron and oil. No movement. No scent that means life or death. Caleb wants to drop in for a quick look. I shake my head. We stick to the decks until we know the pattern of the ship. That kind of rule feels like a leash to a man who wants to move. He nods anyway. He has learned to trust our slow. On the starboard side behind the bridge, we find a lifeboat cradle with the boat half torn loose. The fall lines hang like bad rope. We cut them free and lash the small boat back to the cradle with fresh line, so a storm will not fling it into the water and then into the side of the hull in the middle of the night when we are sleeping. Everything we do is preventive medicine for days we cannot see. We set a signal mirror on the mast beside a rag flag that is not a flag, just a strip of cloth that tells our people on the dune where our heads are. Thomas lifts the baby in the sling and moves it slow against his chest once, like a wave. Claire shakes her head and then smiles because she cannot help it. Even here, that small motion makes the day bearable. When we climb down, Mark insists on going last. He takes the ice screws out as he goes and leaves only the anchors we selected for permanent use. His hands move with care I did not have at his age. He touches each knot twice, once to feel it, once to check his brain feels it. He steps onto the door raft and crouches to keep the center of gravity where it needs to be. He does not look back at the hull the way I want to. He looks forward at the shore and Claire and the baby and Sophia's shoulders and the way Caleb holds the rope like it is a living thing. Back on sand, we lay out what we know. The ship is stable for now. The bar is reachable at slack with a rope guide. We can chain off lanes between containers and start building a spine from stern to bow. We can cut 3 containers on deck into uses, clinic and bunkhouse at first, pantry when we have more secure weatherproofing. We can rig a rain catch off the rows and drain into plastic tanks if we can pull them from shore. We will build sleeping and kitchen on shore for the first week until we trust the hull and the wind. We will not light fires on the deck. We will keep the motorhome behind the dune with the nose toward the track and the pickup crosswise to block a straight approach. We will dig a slit trench downwind. Sakura wants a galley plan that does not turn into a grease fire on steel. She proposes a sand bed for the stove and an inline bucket of water with a lid. Claire wants a wash station with a hand pump and a grey water line that does not pool near sleeping. Evelyn wants a muster board near the rope with names and a peg for each person, and you flip your peg when you cross to the ship and flip it back when you return, because head counts save lives when words fail. Caleb wants a boarding plan for night that assumes skiffs we cannot see until they are in the surf. He wants nets under the rope and a second line just below the surface that trips ankles on swimmers. Thomas wants enough fuel set aside to run a small pump twice a week and to spin the reefer compressor if we find one that still turns without screaming, for 90 seconds at a time, to test without calling every hungry ear in a mile. We assign shifts. Mark takes alarms and lines. Sophia runs the bow prep with Caleb. Evelyn sets signage in paint. Arrows, numbers, names that are simple and spelled the way they sound, so we do not waste seconds arguing on ladders. Nadia would have argued for a double check on knots and slips and lashings. I hear that and write it as a rule. The space beside her name in the ledger stays blank, and then I put one line through it because my brain needs a picture that matches the day. I hate doing it. I do it anyway. That night the wind lies down hard, and the sound of the ship carries. Steel ticking, a chain clanging somewhere the eye cannot reach. The tide slides out and exposes the sand like skin. I turn the radio on low and catch a voice with a rhythm like a newscast from a long time ago. It lists numbers and repeats a reminder to mark fuel and date and avoid open flame near anything that smells sharp. The voice signs off with a short tone. I turn the knob until the hiss is the only sound and sit with my back to the dune. Sophia comes over and sits without asking if the space is free. She watches Mark stand near the baby and then move to the rope to check the knot for the 4th time since sundown. She waits until my jaw unclenches and says quietly, "He told me." I stare at the sand. She adds, "About Nadia. He was alone. The pipe. The culvert. He said she asked. He did it fast. He covered her face before." Her voice stays even. I do not say the thing in my chest out loud. I nod once. I look at the ship and then at the baby and then at Mark's hands on the rope. I tell Sophia I am proud and sorry at the same time. She says, "Me too," and leans her shoulder on mine for one breath and then stands and goes to him. I walk to the ledger and write the rules for night again, stronger. No one goes out of sight alone, ever. If separated, use the whistle once and wait for a count of 60, and then again. If you must do mercy, do it so the living outnumber the dead at the end of the next hour. I hate putting that in ink. It belongs there. We are living in a world where pretending rules do not exist turns the people you love into problems you cannot solve. Morning starts cold and hard. The wind comes off the water and pushes through jackets like they are paper. We boil coffee in a little pot with a lid held down by a rock so steam does not blow our schedule. Everyone eats something. No voices raised. No long speeches. We move as a unit to the rope and clip on one at a time. Caleb goes first with the ice screws. I follow with the chain and the bolt cutters. Mark comes third with chalk, paint and tags. Sophia brings the short pry bar and a coil of soft wire. Evelyn carries the muster board with clothespins and names. On deck, we start a spine lane along the starboard side. Chain across after every 3rd container, then hang a tag with a number and a direction arrow. We say the numbers out loud as we place them, not because we need to hear ourselves, but because saying numbers makes the brain focus. The deck is a mess of pallets and cracked dunnage wood. Piles of lumber sit where crews pushed it aside during loading. We build neat stacks and rope them against the wind. Every piece of wood up here is heat for a cold night, or braces for a wall. Nothing gets kicked aside. Sakura comes across with a basket and a plan. She points to a corner behind a windbreak of containers and says, "Kitchen." I ask what she needs. She asks for a sand bed, 2 bricks, a grate, and a pot hook. She also wants a small wood-burning stove conversion for one of the galley spaces inside the superstructure. I frown because I hate fire inside steel, but she points at the flue vents already built into the ship's kitchen and the duct chasers that climb to the roof. She says we can block and redirect with sheet metal and make a safe draft if we move slow and test every step. I agree and put Thomas on flue paths with her. We take a slow walk through the superstructure with masks and open doors to let air clear anyway. Empty corridors, service stairs, a chart room with a cracked window, and a rolled map that still smells like old plastic. The galley holds great steel tables, a dead range, empty ovens. Sakura sets her hand on the main hood and taps with her knuckles. Solid. She traces the flue line up, then points to a small service door that gives roof access for maintenance. We open it and step onto a narrow catwalk where the wind tries to push us off with a steady shove. Nadia would have loved this job. Nadia would have tangled a safety line around my waist before I had both feet on the ladder. I stand and lock my arm through a rung, and speak the safety steps out loud so everyone hears me repeating the rules she taught us. We bring up the small stove we found in the shore warehouse last week. It is a squat cast iron piece with a short pipe and a dented door. Thomas bolts it to a steel plate so it cannot walk. We run a temporary flue with sheet metal and clamps into the old hood, then pack sand around the base. We test draft with a wad of smoking grass and watch the line pull. It pulls clean. Sakura grins. I trust the flue as far as I trust my own hands, which means we never leave fire unattended, and we never sleep with it lit until we have 3 straight nights of 0 smoke and 0 hot spots. The first week turns into 10 days. The deck changes slowly from chaos into lanes. We chain off rows so a sliding box cannot sweep a person. We tag doors with chalk notes. Seal good, hinge stuck, unknown. We carry a hand drill and a bundle of long screws for quick fastening. We never stand between a container and a rail. We never put a foot on a stack with slack chains. We never ever open a door without the pry bar set to block swing and a rope around the handle so distance stays on our side. On day 8, near midday, we open a container marked with hiking tents and camping gear. The smell that rolls out is plain plastic and dust, not rot. Inside, we find stove kits, water filters, tarps, folding shovels, and boxes of butane gas cylinders stacked like books. We shut the door at once and breathe. Evelyn writes a bold label on a tag. Fuels, burn risk, strict control. We build a schedule for stove use and a separate storage locker in a dry container with a locked hasp. No open flames near that box. No cooking in the same corridor. We will not be the fools who blow this ship apart because someone wanted a quick cup of tea. That find changes our days. We can run small stoves for quick meals in the lee without sucking down our woodpile. Sakura divides rationing with quiet authority. She sets 1 butane cylinder per day for camp use, unless we have rain or wind so bad that a wood fire becomes a smoke flag. Claire blesses this rule because it keeps the baby warm milk, and she can sterilize without 3 trips back and forth across the rope. Thomas builds a vented cabinet for the cylinders with slats and a lock. Evelyn writes names, dates, and counts on the board, and returns get checked before resupply. Cold nights push us to build sleeping quarters that do not punish. We pick a cluster of containers near the superstructure and cut doors into the sides so we do not use the small end doors that jam. We insulate with cardboard, wool blankets, and plastic sheeting, layers that trap air without trapping moisture. We place 2 small pot-belly stoves on steel plates with sand beds and vent them into existing vent chases we have tested twice. We mount CO monitors we scavenged, and we set a night fire watch who does nothing else but sit, check, and tap a bell every 15 minutes. Nobody argues about the boredom of that job. Everyone likes waking up. We find other containers that matter in ways that make work hum, a whole pallet of nails and wood screws, rolls of plastic wrap, 2 pallets of seeds for commercial greenhouses, some useless, some gold, a stack of manual water pumps in boxes with instructions printed on waxed paper. We laugh like fools when we find a container of work gloves in sizes that do not crush fingers or drown hands. Sakura cries a little when we open a box of spices. She does not hide it. She cooks rice with a pinch of cumin that night, and the whole camp eats like it is a holiday. Not all finds smile back. We break a seal on a medical supply box and get a nose full of chemical that makes eyes water. The contents are lab kits and reagents. Nothing for human use without a lab. We tag the door and chain it hard. We do not break down that chain again. We also find a container of boxed food that looks like a dream. Pictures of fruit and oats on the packages, and every single box swelled from moisture or ruined by mold. We pull 3 out for the lesson and then tie the door shut and paint a big X on the outside so nobody wastes a minute later. The infected are present from day 1. We hear foot drag in corridors below and the scuff of something against steel in the chain locker at night. We move with discipline in the superstructure and keep doors chained after we clear a section. We find 2 crew in engineer blues locked behind a heavy door near the stern. They are long gone. We do not describe them in words that stick to the tongue. We carry them to the edge and drop them into the sea with a short prayer that Sakura says in Japanese and English both. No one argues about that either. One morning on a deck sweep, Caleb finds a traveler wedged between a ladder and a container. The person is small, dressed like a fisherman, with a pack roped on tight. No movement, no sound. We set the pry bar, open a gap, and pull the pack clear. Inside we find a photo, a knife, a coil of line, and 2 cans of sardines wrapped in a torn shirt. We leave the knife on the pack and tie the photo into the rope so it does not blow away. We give the person the same water burial we gave the crew. Evelyn writes the find and the ritual in the ledger, not because we like record keeping, but because the act of writing says we are not animals. The first raider skiff shows up on a fog-grey evening when the wind dies and the water goes glassy. I hear the sound of oars first, then the clink of metal against a gunwale. Caleb is already moving along the rail with the pole hook and a coil of net line. Mark kills the small lantern in the lee, and we sit in dark with eyes open wider than nightlights. The skiff slides into range, and 2 men look up at the deck and whisper like we cannot hear whispers over water. They have a hook and a ladder with rubber feet. They are not the first of their kind, and will not be the last. We wait until the ladder touches the hull, and then drop the net curtain that hangs from the rail on a trip line. The ladder catches the net and folds back into the skiff. The man with the hook swears in a voice that does not know water carries sound as well as smell. We do not answer. We do not shoot. We let them posture for 3 minutes, tapping the hull with the hook. Then I snap the marine horn once for a short blast. It goes through the steel like a hammer. The skiff crew back water but do not leave. Caleb calls out one sentence. Move on. We will not trade with you at night. Daylight, white flag, and empty hands, or nothing. They curse again and pretend to consider a fight. Then they row away with a show of casual arms. We watch until they are gone. We double the watch and sleep tightline with boots on. The next day we find their claim sign on the sand 50 yards downshore. A pile of driftwood shaped like a crude letter. We kick it down. We hang a tin plate high on a post that catches sun and flashes to sea in the morning, a signal to anyone who wants to be seen the right way. We add 2 trip lines in the surf, 1 knee-high, 1 ankle-high, with soft cans that will clack under oar and warn us from the deck. Sophia rigs them with bare hands in cold water and smiles when she ties the last knot. She loves outsmarting loud people. Food stays the fight. The sea gives fish, but not enough for every day. The shore gives shellfish, but not without risk of bad water. The dunes hold little but scrub. We plant a garden in boxes on shore, soil padded with dried seaweed and sand, but it grows slow in the wind. We need calories that do not swim. Seeds are hope, not dinner, so I call the broadcast during the safe window and speak plain. New salvage on a grounded container ship. We have stove fuel, filters, hardware and seeds, seeking grain, beans, salt, preserved foods in sealed goods. We'll trade in sight near shore on our terms. No boarding, no names. Say trade east if this fits. 2 days later we get a reply. A male voice with a calm drawl, shorter words, less air. Trade east, small settlement inland, grain and dry beans. Seeking fuel, camp stoves, filters. We can meet at the old ferry yard 2 miles south at first light in 3 days. We will have a cart and 2 people, white cloth on arm. The voice signs with a click and a small code word I do not know. I look at the others. Evelyn nods. Claire says we can spare a small lot of butane gas cylinders if we keep the cabinet locked tight and ration harder for a week. Thomas says he can pull the pickup down shore if we keep to the hard sand at low tide and not overheat. Caleb says he will take point. Sophia says she can ride cover along the dune on foot. Mark says we set silent signals and a 2-minute rule for pulling back. Sakura says she will pack rice and a thermos, not to sweeten a deal, but to keep our own heads level. We agree. The trade goes clean. 2 people in work coats show with a handcart and a white cloth strip on the arm. They keep distance. We keep ours. They open 2 sacks and let me see whole beans and cracked corn. They smell like old grain but not like mold. I give them a crate of camp stoves and a short stack of butane gas cylinders with a good seal. We swap 1 filter kit and keep 2. Claire watches the motorhome. Thomas watches my back. Caleb watches everything. The 2 traders do not stare at the ship. They act like professionals. Before they leave, The woman says the line that matters. We know the rider Darryl. He said you are cautious and fair. I do not smile, but I feel something ease inside my head. That night we cook beans with cumin and eat in silence and let warmth settle us. Weeks turn into months in a slow roll that feels like pushing a heavy cart up a small rise again and again. We build routine on the ship. Morning check, lane walk, pipe tap, infected sweep, muster board, food prep, shelter checks, watch list. We learn the ship's noises so well that a new sound turns every head. We know the feel of a bolt that loosens by touch alone. We fix before it fails. We write what fails anyway, and circle the lesson for later. Storm 1 slaps the hull hard at night and shifts the stack nearest the bow by an inch. Chain adds a new tone when it tightens and grinds. We stand in rain with hoods up and eyes narrowed against water and throw extra lashings over the high box. Nadia should be here for this. That sentence lives in my head, and I do not say it out loud because Mark does not need me to say it. He is already tying the line in a way she taught him, and I can see her in his hands. The box holds. At dawn we drive wedge blocks into every gap we can reach. We do not wait for tonnage to teach us again. We discover infected in pockets we missed. A 3-body knot in a corridor below the bridge where the door had bowed and let arms in. A single walker hung on rebar near a vent, jaw working without progress. We do not drag this out. We put them down clean and fast and bag hands when we do the work. We pour bleach where fluids lie and step around like we are moving in a hospital locker room. We do not make a story of it. We do it and move on. One morning we hear a small voice in the stairwell. Not a call for help, a child humming. We freeze. Claire moves like a switch in her flips. She takes the baby away from the opening and hands him to Evelyn. I move with Caleb toward the sound. We clear each landing like we have done 30 times. The humming stops. We find no child. We find an old phone playing a loop in a room near the crew lounge. Fresh battery, fresh set, a trap to draw the curious. Caleb swears low and safe. We move back to corridors we trust and run the rule set for a human contact we cannot see. The trap tells me there are living people who have been on this ship when we were not watching. We tighten watches and still sleep. We cannot live on nerves alone. The raiders return once more with a bigger skiff and a small outboard that coughs. They make a lot of noise to show they are not afraid, which tells me the opposite. We do not show light. We let them hit the trip line and swear. Then we drop 3 small stones from the rail into the water 5 yards off their bow. The sound is light and meant to make the brain write a target where there is none. They back out by reflex. We leave it at that. We have no interest in a contest that ends with a bleed and a siren of noise echoing down the coast. They drift south and do not return for weeks. We keep trading with the inland group through the ferry yard, never the same hour twice. The woman there gives her name as Ruth after the 4th trade. I give ours as East Shore crew and leave it at that. Darryl's voice dots the air some nights with road notices and short warnings about roadblocks and camps to avoid. I answer with a single line one night. Found stoves and fuel. Trading for food. No boarding. No names. His reply is brief. That is wise. Winter will hurt inland. Keep your ropes high and your smoke low. I picture him somewhere, helmet on, map in his pocket, writing lines that make sense to him alone. He is part of the world without being in our camp. It works. Relationships shift the way wood warps in a dry wind. Mark and Sophia run patrols like a dance. They fight less and say sorry faster when they do. Claire and Thomas build a little nest inside a side container with quilts and a low light and a picture of something that used to be a mountain on a calendar. The baby starts crawling and then standing, and every new reach turns into a safety rule written on the board by Evelyn. No open buckets, no small parts on the floor, no sleeping near open ladders. Caleb laughs in short bursts now and then and looks guilty for it. Sakura keeps us from chewing each other to threads with food and small words that land like stones in the right place. We also snap sometimes. One night after a long watch change and a bad count on the cylinder cabinet, Claire snaps at me for unlocking before she arrived, and I snap back. It lasts 7 seconds and feels like an hour. We apologize with tired eyes and write a new rule. 2 signatures on the fuel cabinet, no exceptions. It slows us down. Good. Slowing down keeps fingers on hands. We extend shore operations, careful and quiet. We set a garden fence with pallets and wire, low enough to climb in a rush, high enough to keep a stray dog out. We dig a pit for compost behind a line of drift logs. We set small fish drying racks on poles with mosquito net sleeves to keep flies off. We bury 3 barrels as caches in the dunes, marked only on our map and in the ledger, because luck is a fool's hope and redundancy is the only honest insurance. During a heavy fog with the horns silent, we lose track of time on a deck sweep and return to find a set of sharp boot marks in the sand near our rope line. Not ours, not the traders, close to the water, close enough to touch the end of our anchor rope. We make no scene. We set a new tripwire with tiny bells wrapped in cloth so only nearby ears hear. Caleb places a slip hook high that will drop a drape net over the rope if someone yanks. We add a dusk-only prowler watch with Sophia and Mark in shifts. We do not get careful later. We get careful now. The superstructure gives us a surprise that changes the grind. A small walk-in cooler, dead for months, but tight and clean. Thomas rigs a knee-high compressor from a generator head and a belt and shows me how to run it for 10 minutes every other day without begging everyone for trouble. We test it with a thermometer and salt water. It holds temp better than I expect. We decide to use it for cooked fish and boiled beans to stretch shelf life by a day. We do not stash raw meat in there. We are not building a trap for our stomachs. Claire writes the rules. Evelyn posts them. And anyone who breaks them loses stove privileges for a week. No appeals. That sounds harsh until you are the one clutching your middle after someone slipped. We do not want that story. The baby spikes a small fever one cold night, and the whole camp tightens to a wire. We rotate warm cloths and check hydration, and talk through signs to watch. Sakura keeps the world level with tea and quiet words. The fever breaks before dawn. We slept in waves that night. We shop our faces the next morning and find new lines. It is fine. Lines mean we lived long enough to earn them. Late in the 2nd month, a 3-person crew paddles up under a white flag in mid-afternoon. 2 men and a woman, hands open, no ladder, no hook. We keep distance. They trade stories for coffee and ask for a water refill. We comply at the rope, with our hands inside the rail. They tell us they came from a barge camp upriver that fell apart when a leader decided he owned children as labor. They say they left at night with a stolen paddle boat. Their eyes hold steady when they say the ugly words. I believe them. I do not invite them aboard. I offer a packet of rice and 2 filters if they share what roads are passable north. They do. We send them south with a hill landmark for Ruth's yard, and a warning to use the white cloth in the cart if they value their lungs. They nod and push off. Evelyn notes their names and descriptions. We are not the police. We do keep a clean memory. Month 3 brings a long dry spell, and wind that scrubs the deck and wears fingers. Our water catch works on the rare rain days. We mount more gutters on container roofs and run hose to barrels. We keep lids on them tight, and we tap from the bottom through a spigot so the top layer of anything never pours into our cups. Filter, boil, cool, drink. The cycle never ends. It keeps us standing up in the morning. On a grey noon during this dry spell, Sophia hears a rattle from under the starboard boat cradle that is not chain and not wind. We angle lights and find a gaunt infected wedged headfirst into a drain, hands scrabbling at nothing. We take care of it, and then inspect every drain grate and deck scupper with a new eye. We bolt screens. We add that sweep to the daily list. We are writing a manual for this ship one task at a time. Small victories stack. Evelyn paints clean numbers on hatch combings. Mark installs a bell wire alarm on the shore rope that buzzes a small box in the galley. Sakura cures fish with salt and hangs it in a screened locker and keeps flies and fingers off. Claire fits the nursery container with a soft door and a latch that cannot pinch small hands. Thomas rebuilds a hand winch so we can lift heavy bits without blowing backs. Caleb tests a section of the hull with a bang stick he built from a pipe and a spring, not for the infected, but for the night a swimmer tries a knife on more than rope. One bad day sneaks up near the end of the 3rd month. A fog holds low, and the tide sits high. Our rope door raft bumps and clacks against the hull in a rhythm that snags attention just enough to distract. Out of that noise, a single infected appears from the fog line and walks into our shore lane like it has been here the whole time. It heads for the motorhome door with nothing in its brain to tell it not to. Claire shuts the door, locks it, and bangs twice on the frame to pull attention from inside to out. The infected falls against the side panel and scrapes at the window. Caleb is already moving along the rope with the pole hook. Mark takes the rail with the .22 rifle, waits for a clear line, says clear, gets my yes, and drops it with one clean shot behind the ear in a way that makes no noise bounce. We drag and bury in wet sand at low tide, and the ocean takes the rest. We do not eat for an hour after. Not punishment, just calm to reset our hands. 3 weeks after that, I catch Darryl on the net at the edge of a rain squall. I keep my voice even and say, we hold a grounded container ship as base. We have camp stoves and fuel. We need grain, beans, salt, medicine. We will trade near shore. Must be day, must be quiet. He answers in a tone that says he is riding when he talks. You made a smart pick. A big hull holds if you hold it. Watch the stacks in wind shifts. Anchor nets under your rope. If you trust an inland lot, trade heavy before winter. The coast eats time in winter. I thank him. He adds a line about a convoy that got hit inland by a roadblock that looked like Helpu and was not. He says the station codes are getting stranger, and the ones with serial numbers are just recordings now. He signs off. I look at the slate sky and accept that we are not going to hear much sense for a while. We stand together at the rail that night. Claire leans into Thomas. Sophia rests her head on Mark's shoulder, and he lets his jaw loosen for the first time all day. Evelyn closes the ledger and tucks it under her coat. Caleb sits with his back to the wall and his hands around a cup. Sakura brings a pot and sets it down and tells me I need to eat, which is her way of saying, stop thinking for a minute. I do. The wind shifts after midnight. The deck ticks. Chain rubs steel in a way I do not like. I stand up and say, storm protocol. No shouting. Everyone moves. Mark hits the bell once for muster. Caleb grabs the pole hook and the wedge bag. Sophia checks the rope anchor on shore. Thomas covers the motorhome windows and brings the butane cabinet key. Evelyn flips the board pegs to show who is on deck. Sakura ties down pots and the small stove pan and moves the baby to the motorhome floor with a blanket nest. The squall lands fast. Rain moves sideways and finds door gaps we thought were tight. The bow stack shudders on the second gust and inches toward the lane. I put my shoulder against the chain and feel the weight on the other side. Caleb jams a wedge under the low corner and yells, pull on my count. Mark runs the soft line around the handle lugs and takes it to a winch stanchion. Sophia braces his feet with hers. 3, Caleb says. We pull. The box creeps back a finger width. Another gust slams and tries to take that inch back. We pull again. The wedge bites. The chain stops singing and settles into a steady hum. We keep tension for a full minute before I say, hold, block it. We hammer blocking all along the base until the stack looks like part of the deck again. By dawn, the squall passes. Everyone is wet and quiet. We do a slow walk lane by lane. No new splits. 2 chains need tension. 1 vent cap is gone. Thomas notes it and covers the opening with a plate until we can cut a proper one. On shore, the garden boxes held under their lashings. The fish racks bent but did not break. We make a hot breakfast and eat without talking. That kind of work talks for itself. 2 days later, we open a reefer we left for last. We prepared for trouble. Caleb stands offline with a pry bar. I run the rope on the latch. Evelyn holds the tagboard, ready to mark hot or clear. We crack the seal. A smell hits that is not rot, more like stale cold air and oil. We open 4 inches. Inside we see metal racks. Not food. Tools. This one held machine parts. I breathe out. We cut it fully and inventory. Bearings in wax paper, belts, small pumps, housings, clamps. Thomas kneels like he walked into a church and starts sorting by size, with his hands moving fast and neat. He says, this saves engines. This fixes the compressor. This is spares for the winch. We haul the bins to a dry box and lock it. That fine changes the maintenance board for a month. A week later, a different reefer. We crack the door, and the stink jumps like a slap. I gag, step back, wave it shut. No heroics. We tape the seam, paint a skull on the outside, and mark it for the next storm strip. When the wind is high and pushing smell out to sea, we will open it long enough to clear whatever sits inside and dump it over the side with respect but without ceremony. You learn to be practical about these choices, or you stop doing the work. We decide to trade heavy. Winter creeps closer week by week. I set a list with Evelyn and Claire. 10 camp stoves, 30 cylinders, 5 filter kits, 2 hand pumps, 1 box of nails, 1 coil of paracord, and a stack of wool blankets we found in a cabin locker. Price, grain, beans, oil and salt. We tell Ruth through the ferry yard protocol. Ruth answers with the same even tone. We can pay grain and beans. Oil small. Salt limited but possible. Bring hands. I pick Caleb and Mark for the cart pull and Sophia for flank. I take the pickup as a fallback and stay behind the dune for the first handoff. No noise, no excitement. Trade day, dawn grey, sand hard. We pull the cart down shore. 2 figures stand at the ferry yard with the white strip on the arm. Ruth and a young man I do not know. We line up with 6 yards between. Show, I say. They open sacks, clean beans, cracked corn, jars of salt sealed with wax, a small jug of oil. I nod. We show our goods. Ruth's eyes go to the filter kits first. No greed, just need. Counting, she says. We count out loud together and pack without drama. When we finish, she nods at me and says, "We hear radar noise inland. If they hit us, we will go quiet for a month. If you do not hear us at the window, do not come." "Copy," I say. "Stay sharp." We haul home heavy and tired and happy enough to show it. We ration with a real plan now. Beans 3 nights a week, corn mash 1, fish 2, rice on the 6th. The 7th is soup from scraps unless the catch is strong. Sakura uses spice once a week to keep morale on the right side of the line. Claire sets a separate baby pot and uses the cooler rule to hold food safe for the next feed. No one breaks that rule. You can say you are tough and then watch a child sleep and you get realistic. The raiders probe again during a moonless run. 2 skiffs this time. We hear the ankle-high line pop cans under their bow. Caleb taps my shoulder. "Left," he says. I move to the other side with the pole hook. Sophia brings the short shotgun but keeps it low. No flashing lights. The skiffs split and test both sides. We drop net drapes and they hit and curse. One man throws a hook anyway and the teeth skip off the hull. I say, "This is your last try. Daylight and empty hands or leave now." One answers with his mouth pushing words through his teeth. I do not respond. The other skiff begins to back. He does not want the sound of a shot. The first takes longer because some people need a story that says they were brave. He finally backs out when his ladder fouls a line and almost throws him in. They go south. We hear their motor cough and catch in the distance. We keep watch all night and rotate in pairs. A month later, we turn the shore garden into a deck garden. Long work. We move soil 1 crate at a time across the rope and up a rig Thomas builds with a hand winch and a guide rail. We lay a barrier on the deck, then boards, then soil. We build boxes from pallet slats. We plant greens, beans and roots. We set windscreens from net and tarp. Sakura fusses over the tiny shoots like a person who knows the stakes. Claire shows the child the leaves and names them. He repeats sounds that kind of match. He walks now, and he grabs anything bright, so we paint the stove controls dull. We finish opening the last containers in the 4th month. Most are empty or junk. Some hide treasure. One holds bicycles in boxes. We pull them out like it is a holiday. Mark tightens bolts and trues wheels. Sophia tests the brakes and tunes the shifters. Soon we have 6 good bikes rolling and a pile of spares. We mark a shore route for recon and resupply that does not chew tires and set a rule. 2 riders minimum, radio check on the half hour, helmets always, and never outrun your sightline. Winter hits with a clean edge. The small stoves run longer. Fire watches lengthen. We pull a second tarp over the sleeping container roofs and kill drafts with rags. The baby coughs once, and we all stop moving for a second, then carry on with the steps we know. We add one more wool layer to his bed and place a warm water bottle at his feet in a cloth sleeve. He sleeps like the world is a safe place because we make it so. The first full year closes with a night drill and a quiet meal. We finish work and gather on the lee deck. Sakura sets out small cups and pours a spoon of tea for everyone. She asks for silence. She says, "Day of remembrance." She points to the sea and says names. Anna, Eddie, Nadia, the crew, the traveler in the pack. Others from the road that we met or traded with or tried to help. She asks if anyone wants to add a name. Mark clears his throat and says, "Nadia, I said it once. I will say it again." He does not tell the story. He does not have to. Sophia takes his hand without looking at him. Everyone is still. Then we eat fish and beans and rice and do the dishes and check the ropes and sleep. Months fold into a second year, with steps we know, and new work set by the season. The inland settlement starts sending more regular trade teams. Different faces, but steady behavior. We swap stoves and filters for grain and salt and tool steel. One trade brings a small box of antibiotics with expiration labels that mean nothing now. We store them dark and cool and write the count on 3 boards. We do not use them for small things. We save them for a line we agree on in writing. A wound with a fever that will not break, a baby lung infection, or a cut that tracks red toward the heart. We do not bend that rule. We do not vote it away under pressure. Power grows from luxury to tool. We salvage 2 solar panels from a roof inland and carry them back on a bike trailer with a flag tied high. We mount them on the upper deck with brackets that can drop flat if trouble watches from the horizon. They feed a small battery bank, enough for dim light strings on the main lane and the galley. We also tap the diesel we found in 2 tanks that stayed tight. Thomas flushes water and sludge through a filter stack he built from housings and screens. He doses with biocide we found in a marina shed and tests in a jar. When the fuel looks right and smells right, he runs the small generator for 1 hour at dusk every 3rd night. We limit the light to work zones only. No carnival lights. Just enough to fix, read, and be human for a short time. More people find us. We do not send invitations. The coast does that work. First a pair on bikes with panniers and clean habits. A nurse named Dana and her partner Miguel, who used to build cabinets. We run them through the awning protocol. We check for bites and fevers and rash. We watch how they respond to being watched. They pass. Dana asks to audit our first aid and latch a routine for sterile tools. Miguel looks at our pallet boxes and starts sketching better joints with a carpenter's pencil. We give them tasks. They do them without flinching. They earn bunks inside 2 weeks. Then a family of 3, silent, skittish, thin. We go even slower. Quarantine, food, questions from a distance. They lost 2 on the road to an ambush and do not speak about it with detail. We accept their quiet. We do not force. They settle into the lower deck bunks after a month and add to the work like they were always here. The child attaches to Evelyn and sits beside her at night while she writes the ledger. We breathe and extend the perimeter to shore in a careful way. Pallet fences with wire between drift logs. A small lookout on the dune with a radio box and a bell. Platform for a bike to sit ready under a tarp. No big walls to call attention. Just edges that turn the fast problems into slow ones. We cut a simple gate from sheet and hang it on the shore path into the garden. We paint a number on it and mark keep closed. People follow rules when signs are clear and the rules keep them alive. We open every last container in the second year and catalogue them. Nothing magic left. More wood, more junk. A few kits worth storing. Fencing staples, rolls of wire, a crate of work lights, a pallet of children's toys, which hurts to look at and helps later when the small ones need distraction. We store it dry. Sakura pulls a simple ball and a set of blocks and lets the rest sleep until the day makes room for joy. She is smart about rationing happiness. We build a recreation deck. That sounds like a luxury. It is not. Work breaks minds. You need one place that is not chores. The ship had a room with a pool table locked behind a door that jammed. We open it, level it, and find chalk and a full rack in a drawer. We haul the table onto a flat section of deck under a tarp roof and rope the balls so they do not roll overboard. We paint a half court on another section with lines chalked with a carpentry square. We string a net between two containers for a rough tennis lane. We make rules. Play hours only when the lookout says green. No shouting. No glass. Put gear back where it sits on the peg. It works. People come off shift, play, laugh, and then go sleep and wake better for it. The child grows into a runner. He is everywhere he should not be, and he learns every rule the hard way. Claire sets a harness rule near the rail. Not forever, just when we work near edges. He hates it. He adapts. Thomas sets tool lines well out of reach. The group learns to move their hands and not leave anything that cuts or burns at ground height. We add a second latch on the kitchen door. We add a mesh across ladder openings. The little guy still finds a way to climb into a crate and scare Claire into a shout that draws everyone over. We make a new rule. No stacking crates higher than 2 without a strap. It sounds silly until you see how fast a 3-high tower can turn into a fall. Year 3 opens with a long storm season. One gale throws surf over the sandbar and tries to twist the ship deeper into the bar. We strap stacks, drop wedges and ride it out. The rail hums. The deck shakes. The sound of chain becomes baseline noise. We hold lines with both hands and talk through each action so nobody loses steps. Afterward, we walk everything. One stack slipped half an inch on the aft lane and cut through a rope that Sophia placed. She takes it hard for an hour and then moves to fix the thing and not herself. That is growth you do not celebrate with speeches. You just note it and say, "Good." After the storms, more people. A pair of brothers with a diesel setup and a few drums. They teach Thomas a better way to polish bad fuel with a heated separator and a finer screen. In return, we give them filters and a chain of paracord and a recipe for rice that actually tastes like a meal. An older woman who used to run a daycare arrives with 2 children who are not hers. She folds into the routine, and the ship's baby becomes a boy who shadows her like a second spine. He is a problem some days, curious, loud, too fast in small spaces, and also a gift. When tired hits hard, seeing him sleep makes people hold it together 5 more minutes. We set up a light string on part of the deck with the solar trickle and a few LEDs we salvaged. It is dim, steady, and enough to read by. We keep it off when the moon is bright and on when morale needs a nudge. We run the generator for a half hour on the darkest nights and turn everything off 5 minutes before end, so eyes return to night without shock. These tiny routines make nights smoother than blank dark. Defenses never rest. We add a second shore gate and a third tripwire. We rig a steel drop panel near the rope anchor that swings down if someone cuts the shore end. We drill for boarding once a month. Alarm, positions, equipment. Non-lethal first unless the border escalates. Caleb runs the drill with a clean voice. He shows the new ones how to move in close quarters without hitting each other. He is careful with words and exact with hands. The drills go from clumsy to smooth over a few months. Not perfect, good enough. We also push out with recon. Bikes run 60 minutes north and south twice a week. Report format is simple: roadblocks, fresh tire marks, smoke plumes, animal sign, bodies, water sources, possible good salvage that we can afford to chase later. Mark writes the recon template. Sophia pairs experienced riders with new ones. Evelyn runs a chalk map that shows change at a glance. We do not chase every lead. We do not take bait. We pick the ones that pay food or safety. Midway through year 3, the deck garden pays real dividends. Beans climb lines. Potatoes fill boxes. Greens actually taste like something. We still need trade for grain, but the garden shaves the hunger edge off. Sakura teaches the new kids to water low, and in the morning, not midday. She shows them how to keep salt spray off leaves by hanging wet cloth on windward sides. She lets them pick first harvest and passes the bowl around like a ceremony. It is not fancy. It is a rule people can feel. We decide to formalize the Day of Remembrance as an annual thing. Sakura handles the words. Evelyn handles the order. We clean tools and wash hands. We light a single lantern. We speak names and fold bits of paper with the names into a box. We keep the box in the chart room under a panel. We do not pretend this fixes anything. It gives the brain a place to store pain that will not throw itself into the middle of a workday. The little boy grows into a child who asks to help with everything. He slows work and speeds healing. Claire teaches him to wipe tables with straight lines and to put lids back on pans. Thomas teaches him left and right by showing levers and pedals. I teach him to stay behind the white line when the rope team moves. He tests that rule twice and loses deck time for a day. He hates me for an hour and forgives me by dinner. He climbs into my lap and asks about Anna. I tell him she was quiet and strong and kept us fed, and that she does not hurt anymore. He nods like he actually understands, which he does not, but he gets that the room got heavy, and he leans into my chest for a minute, and then runs off to chase a ball. Mark and Sophia announce what we could already see. She is pregnant. The ship goes still for a second like we all forgot how to stand. Then noise returns. Sakura hugs Sophia and then takes a deep breath like she is turning a page. Claire checks the calendar and starts a second list for prenatal needs, protein targets, clean water baseline, rest rotation, and a ready kit for delivery. Evelyn draws up a job tree so nobody dumps too much on Sophia in late months and nobody treats her like glass. Mark takes a long walk down to the shore and back, and comes up with a face that looks older and lighter at the same time. We adjust everything around that news. Ladders get extra treads, handrails get wraps. Sleeping shifts change so Sophia is not waking at 1 in the morning for watch. We pull a small bunk into the galley container so she does not do stairs more than she must. Claire and Dana split care calendar duties. The men step up with heavier work without muttering. It is not a show, it is survival. A big test hits 5 months into the pregnancy. A group with 4 boats shows up mid-afternoon under a white flag and then drops it halfway across like we would not notice. I watch with the glass and see boards under tarps and more heads than I like. Boarding drill, I say. People move. Caleb teams with 2 others on the port rail. I bring the rifle and take the starboard corner with Sophia because she refuses to be sidelined completely. Mark goes to the horn. Evelyn takes the radio with Ruth in case this is tied to inland pressure. The boats split and test both sides. I call out, "Stop, back away. We trade by shore only. White flag down, no trade." 1 boat keeps coming. I snap the horn. The blast jumps off steel and water. They flinch. The second boat tries to throw a hook. It snags the drape net and tears. Caleb drops a sandbag from the rail. It lands in front of their bow with a smack. He says, "Next one on the hull." They backwater. The last boater draws a pistol and waves it. I take a breath and say, "Do not." He hesitates and stows it like he decided that was a dumb idea. They trail off south. We keep positions for 20 minutes. When the water clears, we log the event with position and time and do the drill again at dinner, because repetition makes right actions happen under stress. We build more living space as the group hits a dozen new faces. Container cuts with side doors, insulation, stoves, vents. Dana insists on a clinic corner with a curtain and a clean table and a wash station with foot pump. Miguel improves our joinery on everything and teaches 2 kids to cut and plane without cutting their fingers. The daycare woman runs a morning class in the chart room with letters and numbers and simple rules about hands and tools and listening. The kids sit on mats and color with crayons we found in a school supply box, and the sound of quiet concentration makes the ship feel like a town. We bring in more diesel with a controlled salvage from the ship's wing tanks that we sealed early. We dip with a glass tube and pull samples. If the water line sits low and the diesel floats clear, we pump slow through the polish rig. It is boring. Boring work is safe work. We store in drums strapped to the deck in a corner that does not cook in the sun. The small generator runs 2 nights in a row for a festival of dirty dishes and fast repairs, and then we go back to our ration schedule. We never run engines at the same time as a storm. We set that rule after 1 belt slipped and squealed loud enough to draw 3 infected to the shore path. We fixed the belt and wrote the new line on the board. We explore the last corners of the ship with teams and rope and a printed checklist so nobody freelances. We open the forepeak and find only chain and rust. We open a vent chase and find a nest of birds and a dead one mixed in. We clean it with masks and bleach and screen it. We open the lower engine room and find nothing we can use without cranes, so we leave it and lock the hatch and mark it no-go. The ship has no more surprises that can be solved by curiosity. It has only dangers and maintenance. We accept that and stop poking. We also build up shore fortifications without calling them that. Stakes and wire, pallet fences tied to drift logs, a deadfall on the back path that we can trigger if someone charges, a second lookout on the North Dune with a small mirror for day and a blinking light for night. Bikes quietly slide along the firm sand at low tide to recon old marinas and yards. We harvest rope, fenders, and hardware, and leave anything that requires noise or sparks. A storm season later, we schedule a larger trade with Ruth's people and 2 other small groups she vouches for. We pick a neutral beach and bring 2 carts and 3 bikes. We show goods, measure, taste grain, smell oil, count salt blocks. Names are offered and taken on both sides. First names only. One man brings a story about a road south where someone is building a wall across a causeway and charging toll in food. We file it and note the map. No drama, no bravado. Trade is routine now. That is not boring. That is survival scaling up. The day of remembrance comes around again. More names, fewer tears. The weight is still there. It sits among us without wrecking the workday. After the names, Sakura asks for quiet for 1 more minute. Then the kids bring a small basket and hand out pieces of dried fruit from a jar we saved for this. It is a sweet, small thing. People smile without forcing it. Then we put the cups away and check the ropes and run a drill because that is how you celebrate when the world does not care how you feel. The birth date hits in the middle of a west wind with light surf. Claire and Dana take the lead. They lay out clean sheets, boiled scissors, string, a bowl of warm water, and towels warm off the stove. We clear the deck outside and set a circle where no one passes. We run the generator for 10 minutes to power a small lamp in the clinic corner, so hands see what they are doing. Mark stands outside the door with his jaw tight. Sophia folds over a pane and grits through it without asking for anything she cannot have. Sakura kneels and says words that sound like clapping air together. I stand useless and useful at once as a runner and a door guard. The child cries once and then again, a real cry, not a hurt cry. We all sag in the shoulders at the same time like someone closed a valve. Claire opens the door and nods with a face that says, relief and command. Baby healthy, mother healthy, go boil more water, bring the kit. We move. We are good at moving. Outside, the old ship creaks and holds like it has learned the rhythm of our needs. We hold a small meal that night. Soft voices, smiles that look like they belong on the faces wearing them. The older child watches the new one with a puzzled expression like he is trying to figure out why the room changed. He leans against Thomas and asks a lot of questions in a row. Thomas answers everyone. The room feels like what people mean when they say home, not the building, the behavior. More months, more small changes. The kids play ball on the deck with rules about staying inside the chalk line and not throwing high. The pool table gathers chalk marks and dents but stays level. The half-court sees lunch games where people who argued at a work table work it out by running. No sharp elbows, no stupid bets, just moving. The tennis net hosts more badminton with makeshift paddles than tennis because the wind plays tricks. People laugh. Then they go check pumps and pressure and stir pots and write the ledger. The life anchors to work and play in balance. We keep the infected out of the story by refusing to give them room to become a story. We clean drains. We patrol. We keep noise down. When one hits the shoreline, we remove the problem, log it, and go back to work. We do not collect trophies. We do not tell dramatic tales to new kids. We show them how to hold a tool, not a grudge. It keeps heads steady. The raiders move on, or they died on someone else's trap, or they learned we are expensive prey. We do not assume the threat is gone. We drill in daylight and at dusk. We refresh the drape nets. We test the horn. We run noisemakers downwind in case we need to pull a cluster away. The prep work feels dull until the night you need it. Then it feels like the only smart thing you did all week. We plan for the next year. More soil, more boxes. A second small windbreak wall. A third water tank under a tarp roof. A better rope ferry with a pulley that does not chew lines. extra bike tubes, rims, brake pads, a new ladder for the north side that does not ice over, and a school schedule that extends an hour for the older kids who can handle it. Evelyn writes the plan with Dana and the daycare woman. The board looks like order. It reads like a promise. One night I sit with Darryl on the radio for 6 minutes as a squall passes somewhere west. He says he saw lights where there should be none, and he intends to keep that fact to himself. He says he heard a clean broadcast from a handheld near a military band, but the sign-off was a loop. He says roads eat engines, and men with good boots pick trails instead. You built a reef of steel, he says. That is not bad. Make sure it does not turn into an anchor. I get what he means. Comfort drags you under if you forget the rules. I tell him the day of remembrance is next month, and he goes quiet and says, "Good." Then the signal goes rough and he is gone. I walk the deck after and run my hand along a rail that used to cut my palm. We cleaned it. We wrapped it. We made it safe enough to lean against. I stop by the garden and check for dry spots. I step around a toy truck and put it back in the crate. I look down at the sandbar edge where the rope touches water. The cans on the trip line bump once and then rest. The air smells like salt and clean steel and boiled rice. It is enough. We end the year with a simple ceremony we built ourselves. We meet on the lee deck in the late afternoon. We say what went right and what we need to fix. We keep it short. Everyone gets one sentence. I will mind the fuel log better. I will not leave tools on edges. I will write the recon notes before dinner. I will check the stoves before sleep. Then, Sakura brings out a little loaf she baked from flour. We did not blow on nonsense. We cut it into small pieces and share. Kids first, then the rest. No speeches, no flags. Just the act of doing the next right thing. The ship holds. The garden grows. The generator hums on its schedule and then shuts down. The solar strings blink a line of dim light along the main lane. Bikes lean against a rail, clean and ready. The shore gate stands closed, and the bell wire hangs where it needs to hang. New babies cry and then quiet. Older children ask questions we answer with patience we did not used to have. We keep lists. We keep watch. We keep each other in line without crushing anybody. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the stories alive. For now, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and stay alive. Jack's Nightmares, signing off. Until next time, survivor.